Good evening, I'm Steve Fox from Border City Financial. It's Thursday night and welcome back to another video podcast. If you're joining us live, we're delighted to have you join us. So tonight, I want to introduce Ben Graham. So I met Ben a little bit more than a couple of years ago, and I was really in a unique place in life. I was 59, I'm now 61. I was 59 years old, and I was really looking to change some significant things in my lifestyle. Not only did I want to get more healthy, but I wanted to have the best possible quality of life for the rest of life, however short or long that happens to be. And that part was my motivation. That was the part that was really important to me. It was that I wanted to be able to play soccer with my grandkids. I wanted to be able to continue to play hockey. I wanted to figure out a way to get rid of, if it was possible, to get rid of the aches and pains that I was beginning to experience by getting a little bit stronger. So I had this conversation with Ben. We talked about it. He was very optimistic about this. And I was starting to feel very optimistic. That's because I didn't know there was work involved. No, actually, I did know there was work involved. When it came to how did I rearrange my life so that I could sleep adequately, so that I could train adequately, so that I could be happy with how I lived my life, well, that was a different story. And that's a work in progress. But the whole concept of like going to the gym or going to a home gym and pushing weights seemed kind of bizarre to me in the first place, because I really didn't know how that was going to translate into real life. And this is where it's been very transformational for me. So it's the whole concept of I have better balance. Everything in life that I go to do is easier than it was before. And the aches and pains have pretty much disappeared, and I'm happy with where I am in life. And so when the grandkids are here and I get to get in the backyard and kick a soccer ball around and run around for an hour, I can do that, and that thrills me. So anyway, I desperately wanted to share some of my personal journey along this way, because I feel an obligation with this venue to share that information and encourage others. So, if you're 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years old, and, you think that this is something that would interest you, I want you to know clearly, for me, it was not about how can I show off in the gym. It's how do I get to live life better every day? And that has been the amazing transformation for me. And I'm so thrilled that I met Ben and have worked my way towards something that lets me accomplish those goals, those personal goals, in an amazing way. So, Ben, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for the introduction. That was great.
I want to give you an opportunity to talk to our audience, our live audience, or on YouTube, about sort of what your history is. How in the world did you decide to head down this path? How did you get started? What's your journey been like from the start until now? And then tell us a little bit about what your hopes and dreams are for the future.
Yeah, so that's a lot to cover. So first, I just wanted to say thank you, because it's humbling for me to realize how transformative this process can actually be for people. It's very humbling to know that it's not just about a training session. It's not just about a challenging workout, but it's about how people change their perception of training as they get into it, when they realize that there's so much more than just showing up and sweating for an hour. Not only what changes physically, but also what changes mentally. My start in the industry, I've been in the industry for the better part of a decade now, closing in on a decade, but I started right in my first year of university, actually, when I was 18. And at that point, unfortunately, I thought I knew a lot more than I actually did. And I had a little bit of a rude awakening getting into the industry, because I realized I couldn't really help people get results at that point. And the word results is very important to me because I'm a perfectionist by nature, and working in the service industry where people are coming to me with issues just as you mentioned. They don't have the energy to spend time with their grandkids and they desperately want to, or their knees are hurting when they're going up and down stairs and they can't deal with that pain on a constant basis anymore. It's frustrating them. It's making their lives more challenging than it needs to be. Or they're looking to lose 15, 20 pounds because they've been carrying it around for years, and it's just getting to the point where they're fed up and they want to make a change and they don't know how to go about it. And so when I first started in the industry, that was the biggest challenge for me, was how do I help people get consistent results and not just deliver a challenging workout, as so much of our Western society especially has grown to assume that exercise should be. It's drudgery. It's show up for an hour and sweat and pay your dues and hope for the best on the back end. And I wanted to work with people and not just give them a challenging hour of their day, but actually contribute to that transformative process when they weren't in the gym, when they weren't doing the workout. What was happening the other 23 hours of their day? What was happening on the days when they didn't see me? And how could I assist with guiding them through that transformative process? And so that really inspired me to work harder at learning what was required to be an effective coach and not just a trainer. To me, a trainer, even though it's a matter of semantics, is somebody that gives you a difficult workout. A coach is somebody who's going to help you change your life. And I happen to be in a position where the majority of what I lead with is the physical aspect of health. But that does transcend into the mental changes that people go through when it comes to lifestyle habits, whether it be diet, whether it be sleep, as you mentioned, and other contributing factors that are going to form the foundation that's required for them to really enjoy their life in the long term, right? It's not just a short-term input with the hopes that it makes things a little better, but a consistent input over the long term that gradually continues to increase quality of life over months, over years, over decades, regardless of when an individual starts. So starting out in the industry, a few years of trial and error and thinking I knew a lot more than I did, and realizing that I wasn't necessarily getting people the best results or what I felt would be adequate, dialing in the discipline when it came to learning, and then slowly realizing that by putting more and more into the learning process and by focusing more on getting clients results and what they were doing outside of the gym as well, all of a sudden those results really started to compound. And that's when the momentum started to build up. And I realized, you know what, there's a missing link here in the industry. The majority of people in my position, the majority of my peers, if you will, were not focusing on the long-term results for people. And that was something that people desperately wanted. And a lot of the times they didn't even know that it was an option for them. They were so conditioned to think that, I go to my group class and I get sweaty and tired and sore, and that's all that working out is. And so I really started pivoting and shifting towards focusing on the outcome as the ultimate goal, sitting down with clients and saying, where do you actually want to go? Not just show up and punch a clock and do your workout and be done and check the box for the day, but what do you want to achieve long-term from this? And that's when the coaching really started to take off and clients started to get much better results long-term. And then about 3-4 years into that process, I realized there wasn't a place for people to train in the area where mature adults, business professionals, etc., could come to a location and actually work out. And that becomes kind of an intimidating factor for a lot of people because there's so many places people can go exercise where they feel comfortable. There's also a lot of places where you can effectively train where they don't feel comfortable. But there wasn't a combination where they could go to an environment where they could work out in a progressive nature and train in a way that was effective, but also was a professional environment where they felt comfortable. And that's where I kind of moved into that sort of environment. From there, really focused on coaching the outcome for clients and the entire lifestyle habits and all of those foundational factors that would contribute to their long-term success regardless of their goals. Because I have such a wide demographic of clients, the goals range, basically any goal you could consider someone would come to a coach for, I've likely heard it at some point, and further have likely succeeded in the achievement of it with said client at some point. And then from there, that is rolled forward into an international clientele where I have not hit every continent yet in consideration of where I have clients, but it's slowly becoming that reality, as at the end of the day, people are realizing that there is a better service standard out there and that the results that they want are not as far out of reach as they might have thought they were initially, considering a lot of the time they've dealt with what they believe to be a hindrance to them getting those results for decades. And when they realize, wow, I can actually make these changes, they feel empowered, and they realize that a lot of the things that they thought were impossibilities physically are actually well within their reach. And that's kind of how my entire career has been built out to this point thus far.
Yeah, so much of business has had to change radically.
Oh yeah,
in the last 6 months with the global pandemic. You had already started or were well down the path on building a global business, coaching business. Tell us a little bit about sort of, why you were already headed in that direction and how that has worked out well. Tell us how you've built this out and how this can work.
So what became interesting with the virtual coaching model, not to be confused with like we're doing almost a live chat here, that's not how online coaching works in my world. It is a model that some coaches use. But what basically happened was I realized that there were a lot of people who didn't necessarily require the accountability of a coach in a session, but require the accountability relative to knowledge. Meaning they wanted the programming, they wanted the weights set for them on exercises so that they weren't getting injured. They wanted to make sure they were doing exercises that were reasonable for their physical capacity. They wanted to make sure that if they had some sort of injury or some sort of deficiency in play for them, that they weren't doing things that were going to make it worse, and hopefully they were doing things that could help them overcome it. And that kind of was why I introduced this online model in person to start with, almost a hybrid model where I might work with a client once or twice a week in a session, and then they would have guidance outside of that session available, so the rest of their week was still progressive, which falls back to what I mentioned earlier, where it was like, how can we work on those other contributing factors when they're not with me? And that sort of transitioned into, it was actually one day a client reached out and said, hey, my son lives on the other side of the country, and he's interested because he's seen the incredible results I'm getting. Can you help him? Mm-hmm. And I said, well, I'm basically doing online coaching with people locally in a sense. What's his email? And I basically took the exact same software that I was using to deliver programming, and there was no one-on-one appointment anymore. It was the packaging of the knowledge and information they required, and obviously the communication back and forth online. And that began to snowball because, word of mouth, you're talking to a client and, you're excited because it's like, hey, I picked up a client all the way in Alberta and I'm in Windsor, Ontario. This is kind of exciting. And they go, well, I have a cousin who lives over in Texas. Could you work with them? I'm pretty sure I could. And that sort of snowballed. And once that started building momentum, my online presence alone on social media, people would reach out and say, hey, I live here. I wish that I could work with you. Unfortunately, you live far away. And I could respond back and say, actually, I can work with you. But the key with the virtual model for me was, it was always, how could I bring another standard of quality, or how could I improve the standard of service? Considering even within the online world, people think it's just, I'm going to download a workout and I'm going to do it. I wanted to see how we could bring a greater degree of individualization to the online world, because in person, we do so much individualization with our clients where we set the exact weights for them. We pick the exact exercises relative to what their individual situation requires, right?
I'm very familiar with that.
Yeah, and we do, movement screens with clients to ensure that we're aware of what, injuries they might have, what individual limitations they might have, asymmetries, if they have a muscular imbalance from one side to the other. So we try and go really deep with clients and make sure that the programs they're doing are built for them. And so it was like, how can we bring that online? And so that whatever the online community is doing, you can almost bet that we're 10 steps ahead of them in terms of what we can deliver in that online model. It's not just a simple, here's your workout in an email and do whatever weight you want and, nothing else. We have videos built into it so that it can guide the clients through the workout and they can understand what they have to do and reference it. And so that's kind of how I got into the online, and that came in really handy when the whole pandemic situation unfolded. Although unfortunately we didn't expect our clients to go to zero equipment. That was the biggest challenge, where working with north of 120 clients, and the email coming back is, I have a red band and a dumbbell from the previous homeowners. I think it's 20 pounds, but I don't know. So that was challenging, to take all of those individualized programs and pivot to whatever equipment people had available. But understanding that we were already present in the online world made it very easy for us to navigate. And then it brought on a lot of other people as well who were stuck at home and didn't know what to do without access to all of the amenities that a normal gym might offer. So
if this is really what you want to do, you can find ways to actually make it work.
100%.
Oh my goodness, the inventiveness of people to come up with things that would work for them was incredible. So I want to address this one issue because boy, I'll be really self-revealing in this, in my conversation with you and whoever happens to be watching this. I had never lifted anything probably more than a couch when I was moving from place to place.
I didn't know that.
Right, in my entire life, I just, it was never anything that was attractive in any way, shape, or form to me at all. And you were very gracious with me when we first met, and you asked me clearly, what goals do you have? What exactly do you want to get to, and how can we design this to achieve your goals? But at the very beginning of it, it's pretty intimidating, right? I walk into your facility. Yeah. There's all this equipment, and the first thing I see are two females that are way stronger than I am. And I'm like, oh, so what? We're going to pick up 5 pounds and we're going to try and lift this in front of all these obviously much stronger people. So I come to understand very quickly that this is my self conversation, and I catch it and I stop it quick, because as soon as I walk by one of those first really strong girls, they look over at me and say, awesome, so great to see you here, and they're wanting to be an encouragement to me. Yep. And that's the tremendous benefit and the support of being in a place where you can encounter other people and be part of that conversation. And it helped reinforce with me the process when I got connected to your Facebook page, and I see that same female with a before and after picture, and my jaw hits the floor. And I'm like, whoa, like if it was intimidating for me, it'd be intimidating for everybody. And look at the transformation that these people have made. Like, it was just astounding. Yep. So inside the facility, when we can be together, if that ever happens, I'm not sure. We'll see.
Hopefully not wave 2. We're right on the cusp of coming back. So
yeah. But that part I wanted to be self-revealing about the intimidation factor, because whether you work out from home or you work out in a facility, if it's something you've never done before, it can be really, really intimidating. And so when you're doing distance coaching, which you're obviously doing very successfully, how do you do this with people to get by that initial, intimidation factor of, oh, I've never done this before, I have no idea what I'm doing?
That's actually one of the biggest hurdles. is getting by that, especially with individuals who might be a little bit more insecure or overwhelmed in a training environment. Because what tends to happen is if I'm working with somebody online, the chances of them being able to attend a facility similar to what I own is very unlikely, because if you come to my facility here in Windsor, I'm doing all the coaching for you. You're not coming to this gym and utilizing someone else's coaching. There's a disconnect there. It wouldn't make sense. And that's often similar wherever people might live in the world. Is a smaller location that would have the community and culture that we have often isn't going to have people in there utilizing another coach's services, which means that those people are likely going to be training at either a home gym setup, which is often the case, but also at a large Globo style gym, right? And that second environment can prove very intimidating for people. So it's not something that can be well managed in the sense that I can say, well, just go in there and do your thing. But what I can do is two things, and I often do this, is the first is I make sure that the programs at the beginning are simple. Not easy, but simple. Simple such that the exercises aren't confusing or overwhelming, because the confusing and overwhelming part for individuals is going to be entering into that uncomfortable environment. I don't need to add to that stress. So I make sure that the exercises selected, even if somebody has some experience in the gym, are simple, straight to the point, things they can figure out quickly. They're not complex in consideration of how they have to be executed, which means that they're not overwhelmed in their head thinking, okay, am I doing this right? Because those exercises oftentimes, as a coach, I'm requesting videos for. So now you take someone and you put them in an environment where they might be uncomfortable or insecure or overwhelmed or think everybody's looking at them. Then you ask them to do a challenging exercise and send you a video. So they've got to set up their phone or ask somebody to film them. It's a no-fly zone. So as a coach, I take a step back and I say, all this stuff is very basic. The chances of you doing it wrong are slim to none, even if you have very little experience in the gym. If you feel that anything is uncomfortable or off, let me know. And then, of course, I would request a video, or I'll just jump on camera and show them and confirm with them, even though they might be in their bedroom or their living room. Does this look like what you were trying to do? Oh, yeah, that's definitely what I was doing. Great, perfect. And I try and eliminate that whole complexity of exercise at the beginning so they can just get comfortable with the environment. And then as they get comfortable and they realize that, nobody there really cares what you're doing as long as you're not in their space, then they build that comfort and that confidence, and then we move into the more complex training as time goes on. But the other thing I try and do my best for, and you're a member of one of these groups, is actually both of them. Online, I have online accountability groups. And that's where I really try and bring the culture and community that they otherwise wouldn't experience, because they might live in Mexico, or they might live in Germany, or the UK, or in the US, or just across the country, or even just down the street in Toronto, right? And because they can't experience our culture or community on a consistent basis, we can kind of recreate a degree of that online, which has also served people well through lockdown, because when we're all socially distanced and, we can't see people to the same degree that we could before, there's still that community where it's like, hey, everybody else is trying their best as well. I like the fact that I can't see so-and-so at the gym, but I can communicate with them about their process and their journey as well. So I try and build that community and that culture online, where people that work personally or in person with us also are able to push that forward to people that are in a distanced environment. So that's kind of the best I can do, but it is a very challenging hurdle to overcome, and it's different for everybody. Some people get over it very quickly. Some people struggle with it for months, and I try and stay in their corner and contribute to their confidence. And I have yet to have any clients who haven't been able to get over it, but I've had clients who, one workout, they're good to go. I've had clients who it's taken a year for them to overcome that feeling of overwhelm and insecurity when they're in those public environments.
I can totally relate to that when you're talking about a public environment. Back before COVID, when we actually could travel, we were occasionally away somewhere. And I would notify you ahead of time and say, I'm going to be gone from this date to this date, or Victoria and I are both going to be gone. And so, I'm not sure what kind of access to equipment we're going to have. And so we would kind of scope out a hotel or, wherever we were going to be, or we would actually search out a local gym or a couple of local gyms. And I would call them and I would say, what is your policy? Can we come and visit your gym? Yeah, absolutely. Come in. Some would charge us $10 or $15, to come in and work out. Some of them said, no, just come in and work out. And so, you walk into a place. I remember being in one gym in Quebec and everybody speaking French. Talk about feeling out of place. Yep. Right. So you walk in and you see some guy who's like, I don't know, 29 years old. And I want to use the term muscle bound because I'm kind of ignorant. I don't know what other term to use, but this guy was just a monster. He was huge. And so, right away, your brain wants to go back to that place of, how am I going to work out in front of this guy?
Of course.
Right. And then you just like, no. And you suddenly realize you go over, you try to engage people in a conversation, which it'll look for me a little difficult in a different language, but we work our way through it. And you realize that he's just a little farther down the road than I am, right? Yep. He has a different goal than I do, but we're there for the same purpose. And we can work out back and forth on the same machine and just encourage each other.
And it's interesting you bring that up because this is something I try and clarify to people all the time, is that the majority of individuals you're going to run into at the gym, excluding, there's going to be a few people there that are just not nice people, but that's everywhere in life. But the majority of people at the gym are working on something to better themselves physically and mentally. And regardless of where you might be in your individual process, they respect the fact that you're also on a similar path. So you might not have the same goal. In fact, you likely don't have the same goal as everybody else at the gym because there's so many variants on what people define success as and where their aims are. But I can attest just from the diversity of goals and the diversity of demographic just in our physical location alone, everyone is supportive of each other.
Absolutely.
Oh, you're working to bench press 225 pounds. I don't even like to bench press, but I still applaud you when you win. Oh, you want to lose 100 pounds and I'm trying to gain 20. I still applaud you when you win, even though our aims differ and the mode with which we employ to get there differs. I can applaud your success and your effort. And the majority of the gym community is quite supportive in that way. As much as you might think that people are going to be the other way, not you personally, but people in general, it is rarely ever the case.
Yeah, I've certainly had that experience, and I've been a participant in that in the gym, right? When you know what somebody else is working towards, I don't mind highlighting this. I'm not saying the person's name, but I don't think the person would be embarrassed by it, but I wouldn't do it anyway. But this one female was working towards a weight loss of 100 pounds.
Yes.
That just blows my mind. I mean, I remember the first time that I figured this out or found this out, and I was like, say what?
Yeah.
It was like mind blowing. So I remember going over and having a conversation, talking about the shirt that this girl was wearing, because she was wearing the same shirt all the way along until she got to the 100 pounds. And then I remember like going in time after time after time, and I would say, well, what's the number? 6. I got 6 more pounds to go and I get to change my shirt. Yeah. Right? Well, who can't be motivated by that? I mean, it was insane. And the day that she came in with a different shirt on was like euphoric. Right? Yep. It's just infectious. So you talked about doing this online. I've had the same kind of experience. Again, I'm not disclosing names, but I have 2 very good friends in that live in Central America, and they have some very specific goals that they want to work to in their physical fitness. And, they shared that with me when I happened to be down there, because I am down there on a reasonably regular basis, just not this year with COVID. Yep. And I encouraged them to become part of one of these online groups, which they did. And now there's some encouragement and accountability. And I speak to them on a regular basis, and they're like, yeah, it's actually very motivating. It really helps me and encourages me, in this direction. So, yes. So just between the 2 of us, we've managed to influence and encounter and hopefully encourage and see people from other countries get to their goals. So it truly is an amazing process, and it's very infectious.
Very much. Very much.
I want to get to some of our live questions. Well, the first one is, do you do different programs for men and women since they lose weight differently? Now
Yes.
that obviously suggests that this is the goal, to lose weight, but yes, if you can take that question.
Yeah, so everything we do is individualized. So it's not even just a male and female thing, it's based off the person themselves. Whatever the goal might be, whatever their individual physical limitations might be or lack thereof, training history, all of that is considered on an individual basis, and programs are then built out and customized to that person. So if you were to go through every program I have for clients on my main hub here in the office, and you were to look through programs, you'd see a couple of similarities between some individuals who may have similar goals and maybe at similar points in their training, but you'd be hard pressed to find a carbon copy program from one to another. So everything is individualized, and also considering that, people's pace is going to be different as well. Some personalities are going to excel to a greater degree with different levels of intensity and training consistency. So everything is individualized to the highest degree that we can, depending on what sort of accountability an individual is being serviced with.
Excellent. Next live question. Do you work with individuals that have physical limitations, such as back or neck injuries or other types of physical limitations?
Yeah, so almost every physical limitation that you can think of, I've likely seen a degree of at some point. Even at one point, I had a client of mine who was 84 years old who had a very rare form of muscular atrophy occurring. I can't recall off the top of my head, nor would I be able to pronounce it, even if I did remember it. But he was literally, we're talking like 1 in 10 million, very rare, and he was basically stuck in a wheelchair, and he had very little control over his limbs, but he had enough control that he could do some level of physical exertion should I take him out of said wheelchair and assist him with some movements, and all the way through to, as questioned here, back and neck injuries, etc. I've seen quite a bit of stuff. Now, the only challenge that comes into play is understanding that to a degree I have to work with whatever professionals in their corner in consideration of chiropractors, physicians, physical therapists, whoever might be in their professional team or network. Everyone's different. Some people have literally comparable to an entire professional sports staff behind them. Some people have nobody behind them. They've been given a, all clear from the physiotherapist, and they're moving onwards and upwards, and, from there, we just move forward to the best of our abilities. But yeah, we do work with a lot of physical limitations, because at the end of the day, going through life, everybody's going to be dinged and scraped up and bruised a little bit from whatever they've gone through. So there's always something. Sometimes it's small, but there's always something.
This next question from the live audience is partially targeted at me. It says, Steve talked about sleep. And I recall, and I don't think this is terribly unusual, especially here in North America, but I think I recall accurately when you asked me, how much sleep do you get on a regular basis? And I said it was probably around 5.5 hours.
Yes.
And yeah, I think.
How impressed do I sound right now, reflecting on this?
That was a humbling thing to say, because, it's like, oh, okay, the teacher is asking a question. How should I answer the question that the teacher wants to hear? But I was honest, and I told you this is typically what I do. And I've spent a great part of my life operating like that, because I have a tendency to feel like I'm getting through the things in life that I want to get through by sleeping less.
Yes, that is very common, though. That is very common.
Yeah, absolutely. So the question from the live audience is, how many hours of sleep are adequate for the average person?
Adequate or optimal is my rebuttal, but I would assume that we can
Take
answer
it away.
both. So there's adequate sleep would probably be on the low end 6 hours. Optimal is likely going to be 7 to 9 for the majority of people. And what's valuable to consider is that sleep is not just quantity, but also quality. Right, 9 hours of interrupted sleep every 20 minutes isn't going to serve you well, whereas 6 hours of unbroken sleep is likely going to contribute much more to optimal health as well as adequate rest and recovery in relation to what you're doing in the gym comparatively. So a lot of people lay in bed for 10 hours watching television, and they kind of doze off and on, or they're on the couch and they wake up after 3 hours and then they go to bed, and then they come down 2 hours later and get a snack. That's not quality of sleep. You might be physically resting for an extended period of time, but it's not really helping you relative to your health profile. So that is one thing, as you know very well, Steve, I harp on sleep, and it's not just you. I'm on everybody's case for it, and I'm brutal sometimes.
Yeah, don't worry. I didn't feel like it was just at me.
No, and that's because sleep is so underrated and so often overlooked. People don't even think it's important nowadays, it seems. And I tell people all the time that, I even use a little saying where I say you can't spell results without rest, right? And it's a silly little saying, but it's so true, because almost every result that an individual might want as an output from their inputs in the gym or relative to their habits in the kitchen or what may be requires rest and recovery, right? If you want to get stronger, to any degree. I'm not talking bench pressing 1,000 pounds or being the strongest person in the gym. I mean just stronger.
Right.
You want to have the ability to climb the stairs without knee pain, or maybe you want to be strong enough to play hockey without knee pain, or maybe you want to be able to do your yard work on your own without having to hire a company to do it because you really enjoy being outdoors and engaging in those activities. You need to be rested and recovered. If you want to get rid of chronic pain, not necessarily get rid of it, but improve it dramatically, rest and recovery is key. If you want to make sure you're not sore after your workout or not sore on a regular basis, rest and recovery is key. If you want to lose weight, you need to make sure you're getting adequate amounts of sleep. If you want to make sure that you're eating healthy foods on a regular basis, well, if your sleep is poor, it's going to undermine your ability to maintain a quality diet, because it's going to impact hormones that are going to lead to you making poor decisions. So when it comes to anything that somebody might want to achieve, I can almost always find a way to tie it back to sleep in some form or fashion, which, as you know, means I harp on sleep all the time with everybody. It does, and it's across the board. It doesn't matter if people are 18 or if they're 88. I have clients that neglect sleep, and that's what I zero in on, because until that foundational factor is accounted for on a consistent basis, it's such a shoddy foundation that almost any achievement is going to crumble that foundation, because they might get this strong and then an injury takes place. They might lose 5 pounds, but they can't get to the 20-pound milestone because, they have all these cravings for unhealthy foods because they've only slept 4 hours.
One of the other questions from the live audience is, can you give us some tips on how to improve sleep?
Oh, can I ever? If I harass people enough about their sleep, I better have a few solutions for them, a few answers for them. So obviously a lot of this, as I always mention, depends on the individual and the scenario itself, because everyone's going to be different. But a few things, if controllable, is going to be going to bed at a consistent time, the same time preferably. This is a misstep that a lot of people make, where they are in control of their schedule, but they stay up on Wednesday night because there's a TV show on. So they stay up till 12 a.m. and then the next day there's not, so they go to bed at 8 p.m. And then Friday they're out with friends, so they stay up till 11 p.m. Right? And this is very common in society nowadays, where because we can stay up so much later as a byproduct of technology being available to us, that we do stay up much later, right? We have screens on constantly. And so that inconsistency of sleep time really wreaks havoc with our circadian rhythms, which compromises our quality of sleep, which means that sometimes you can't fall asleep because your body's not acclimated to going to bed at a certain time. Sometimes you get tired way earlier, and then you end up falling asleep at 6 p.m., and then you wake up the next morning at 2 a.m., and then you're tired the next day again very early, but you have to stay up later, so you drink caffeine late in the evening. So it just, like, there's a million spider webs that you can go out on here, but it comes back to getting your sleep schedule as consistent and structured as possible. As boring as it may sound, making sure that, okay, it's 10 p.m., it's time for me to go to bed because I wake up at whatever hour for work or for life or what may be. If you can master that consistency of sleep schedule, that is going to make a huge difference, and ensuring that that sleep schedule you try and create actually allows for 7 to 9 hours of sleep, right? If your sleep schedule is, I go to bed at 12 because I have to wake up at 4 a.m., you've already lost off the jump, even if you sleep the whole 5 hours. So finding a way to say, okay, if I go to bed at this time, I know I wake up at this time. Is there room to sleep 8 hours? Yes, good. That's a good place to start. You might adjust it minimally from there, but that's a good place to start. Ensuring as well that if you can't, it's time to audit your schedule and determine why you think you can't. Because rarely is it a lack of time. We all have the same 24 hours. It's a lack of priorities. Right? Sure. Every time somebody has come to me and said, I don't have time to sleep 8 hours, why do you feel that way? Well, I have to do this, and this. Okay, do you actually have to do all of those things then? Is there any time during the day where you're procrastinating and you can find time to do those things? Can somebody else do some of those things for you? And oftentimes we find that at the very least you can improve it dramatically. You might not nail it perfectly all the time, but it's a good start. Having a regular sleep schedule is the foundation. Having a sleep system going into that schedule is valuable. I often tell people maybe a half hour before bed, wind down, right? We have technology at our disposal. We can stay up, we can stay wired, we can stay connected, we can stay, flustered with all of the news and the action movies and the gunshots and the flashing colors. And right, a lot of people don't realize that our eyes actually have photoreceptors in them that are very sensitive to light. And we are not well adapted to the reality that we have light available when we technically shouldn't.
True.
This light is not natural. Right? And so just as we are right now, kind of late at night, close to my bedtime, not necessarily yours, right? It's almost 8 p.m., Kurt. I live by it. I'm not joking. It's almost 8 p.m. It's almost bedtime. But having those unnatural lights in front of you, if you're not winding down, your body's not going to be able to produce the optimal hormones that are going to impact quality of sleep. So I suggest to people a half hour before bedtime, just some basic things. Shut off your devices, get off your computer, get away from your television screen. Don't have a television on in the background. You might think you need it to fall asleep. You really don't. You just need to improve your habits before bedtime. Maybe a shower or a bath or a hot tub, something relaxing that's going to start bringing you down a notch or two, right? A book, exactly. Yeah. It's going to make you tired, right? And then when you're reading, make sure the light is behind you and not blaring right into your eyes, right? A little bit of tea is a great way to cool down, right? Bringing the body into a relaxed state before bed is so important, and having that as a structure, knowing that, hey, I'm going to bed at 11 p.m. It's 10:30. Time to put the social media away, right? Time to shut the tablet off. Time to start winding down. Like when you say read a book, like a physical book. I know those are like antiquated concepts to people, but it makes such a difference. And another thing that I bring up to people is making sure, especially with the current work from home model that's happening, if possible, bedroom should not be workroom, because now you're going to think work in the bedroom. Bedroom should be bedroom. That's all it should be for. Right? That is whatever happens in the bedroom. Bedroom stuff happens in the bedroom. Keep it that way. Don't bring the computer in there. Don't bring the laptop in there. If the television's in there, it likely shouldn't be, because you're going to get used to, I'm going to turn on Netflix before I go to bed. Then you're going to fall asleep with all these lights flashing there, and you're going to wake up feeling lethargic and not rested. So those are some of the biggest things that you can start to work on. Making sure that your bedroom is for bedroom stuff, not for work. Making sure you have a structure before you go to bed that brings you down and relaxes you. And ensuring that you're aiming for that consistent bedtime on a regular basis. Extremely valuable. Those would be like the 3 pillars I would start with.
Talk about the optimal time for sleep from your opinion and your homework and your research, because that's also a key. Yeah,
so when it comes to when you should be asleep, and this is tough if you have shift work or swing shift or anything like that. I do work with some emergency personnel who they don't really have a choice. I work with some individuals who work steady midnights. They don't have a choice. And so it's about how can we optimize what they're currently dealing with lifestyle wise that can't just be change tomorrow because I have an opinion as a coach and I feel that they should change their profession to optimize their long-term health. But that being said, if it is within an individual's control, it is optimal for them to be asleep during the hours 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. That window is when you're going to have optimal hormone release that is going to contribute to restorative, progressive rest and recovery. A lot of people miss that window by a long shot. And when I say asleep, I mean like you're asleep before 10 p.m., so you're actually asleep and unconscious, not just going to bed at 10 p.m., because it does take time to actually fall asleep and get into those deeper sleep cycles. And ideally right through till 2 a.m. And obviously that's not a full 8-hour window, so it does provide some flexibility around it. You know, you could go to bed right at 9:45, which I realize is unreasonable for the majority of people. But it is a significant enough window where you can benefit from getting the majority of it as well. But I bring that up to people because it's not uncommon for people to think they're a night owl, and they're not. They're not a night owl. The increase in hormone production that takes place at 10 p.m. is what gives you that second wind if you're still awake. And so the perception becomes, well, I get a second wind at 10 p.m. because I'm a night owl. Not the case. You get a second wind because you should have been asleep, and that uptick in hormone production is now expressing itself as an increase in energy, because that's technically what is occurring internally, should be occurring while you're asleep. And now you just have all this energy because you remain conscious through that transitory period that would have taken place while unconscious. So when people are asleep during those hours on a consistent basis, it's interesting to hear their feedback as to how much better they actually feel, not knowing how poorly they felt before. I use my brother as an example because for the better part of the past 15, 20 years, he's worked basically steady midnights, excluding a few weeks here and there. And I bully him about sleep just as I often pick on clients. And when I say bully, I use the term loosely. I genuinely want them to excel and succeed, and I'm not actually picking on them, maybe like 10% of the time. And he was someone where I would remind him, because he had this biphasic sleep schedule that was horrific, where he would sleep 4 hours and then wake up, go to work, come home, sleep 4 hours, wake up, sleep another 2 or 3 hours, and it was very choppy and inconsistent. But he had kind of lived that way for so long that he was just used to it. And I kept harping on him, and I said, we have to improve this sleep schedule. And further, if you ever have the chance to switch off of midnights, let me know how you feel when you're actually sleeping when you should be. And the lockdown actually forced him into that sleep schedule because they shut down the factory for an extended period of time, so much so that naturally his body just shifted to a optimal sleep schedule, as is often the case. When we remove a lot of the tasks that we have to check off of our list, when we remove a lot of the commitments that we make outside of normal work hours, what ends up occurring is that when we're able to fall asleep, when we don't have the distractions such as hockey games or television shows that we want to watch, or late night outings that we commit to with friends and family, what ends up occurring is oftentimes people naturally start to find themselves tired around 9:30. And it seems unreasonable if people don't do that regularly, but it's also unreasonable.
Yes, it does seem. I agree.
When people say it's unreasonable, I suggest to them, when's the last time you haven't had those commitments around, right? And it's probably been forever.
Correct.
And so it's not until those commitments and those tasks are rolled back that we're able to realize, like, oh, wow, I'm actually pretty tired around 9:30 because I have nothing else to do, right? And so what occurred was he slowly fell into a sleep schedule where he was falling asleep around 10:30, 11, which is much different than someone who's working from 11 p.m. till 7 a.m. on a consistent basis. That's a big turnaround. So after about 8 weeks of this schedule taking place, I asked him, how do you feel? And his response was, I had no idea how crappy I felt for the last 15 years.
Right.
He goes, I didn't realize because it's just how I felt. He goes, but now I actually wake up in the morning and I feel refreshed. I feel energetic. And he had forgotten what those feelings were like because they didn't really exist for him anymore. So it was a very eye-opening experience. And coming out of lockdown, he flexed his seniority a little bit to ensure that he did not return to midnights because of how empowering it was, how encouraging it was to feel that much better. And oftentimes we are our own worst enemies, where we don't really realize how good we could feel, or we don't think it's realistic to make those changes. And so we kind of put them on the side burner. But the more we start to shift in that direction, as you have very dramatically compared to where you came from, you start to realize, wow, this is actually nice. I have more energy. My workouts don't feel like drudgery. They feel like I'm getting better. I'm making progress, measurable progress too. You can lift weights you could never even consider lifting before, and it's not an overwhelming challenge for you where you feel like you're going to injure yourself. And you have more energy to spend throughout the day, and your life improves dramatically. So there's my very opinionated stance on sleep.
Well, I love it. I gotta tell you that it's been such a fascinating experience working with you for the last couple of years, because when you enter into a relationship like this, the whole reason why you hire somebody is because they're an expert in their field, right? Otherwise, like, I don't know, do it myself, right? Figure it all out by myself.
100%.
Yeah, well, it was so ridiculously intimidating at the beginning. I was like, I don't even know where to start. I'm afraid I would hurt myself.
Yes.
Right. And then all of a sudden you're going to go, well, this is a really stupid idea. Why did I ever do this? So, when you work your way through the intimidation and you've hired somebody, you realize that even though they're the expert in their field, there's still this occasional nagging thing that says, well, I think I'll test that. Right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, it's like fail, man. it's just, no. What did Ben say? That's what I need to do. All right. So,
but you see, I encourage that, Steve, right? I encourage that pushback and that testing because it reaffirms much of what I'm sharing with people, right?
Absolutely.
I invite them to sometimes. Yeah. If you don't believe me, try it for a week and then go back for a week.
Right.
See how you feel. Then you tell me, right? and I very much encourage that because I don't want people to take my word for what it is. I don't want people to trust in me blindly for my expertise, right? Mm-hmm. I encourage them, like, bring me another source that you feel is conflicting, and let's talk about why you feel that way or why that information is a point of confusion for you, right? And I like to bring other professionals in, as I'm pretty sure I've done with you many times, where I've shared, books or, articles or videos from other professionals where I'm like, listen, this is not just me saying this, as weird as it might sound. Here are other people who have incredible reputations saying, hey, this is important. You should focus on it. So, no, I like that pushback as much as you think that it's, maybe not something well received. It's something where it excites me because now you get a different perspective and you get to experience it over again and go, aha, I know why that doesn't feel good now. Whereas before, you might not have recognized what it was that was undermining your progress.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. It's probably most obvious to me, on some day when, for whatever reason, I just had like a horrible sleep or very little sleep. And, when I was working in the facility with you, I would call you up and say, well, here's what happened. And you would be like, well, just don't come here today. Yep. And I would think, well, that's kind of stupid. What a waste. I had this in the schedule. I set the time aside, and now he's telling me don't show up. So then I a couple of times I didn't tell you, and I did show up, and then you asked me right away 5 minutes into the workout because you already knew what the issue was. Yep. And I was like, this is terrible. There's no way to hide this, right? So
it's like I have a radar.
Yeah. So now I'm at the point where, if I'm working out from home, because I'm working from home and it's here and we have some equipment now, I'll just have like a really, really crappy night's sleep, or I won't sleep more than, 3, 4, 5 hours. And, I'll just look at my app and go, close it. It's not going to happen today.
It's not worth the risk
right.
of injury.
Well, now it's like it's ingrained, right? It's been proven to me over and over again, and I understand that this is actually how it works. So, so I'm giving you credit in this process, because I actually, begin to experience these things. So, what's ended up happening, which is really fascinating to me, is that I'm left with this option, like you so adeptly pointed out to everybody, is all of us get to determine our own priorities. And this has been a real key for me, because I say this to people in their, financial lives. We all get to determine our own priorities. And so, now I've come to this keen awareness at getting close to 300 workouts in, that I have substantially changed my lifestyle, and that I like my lifestyle. So I'm not going to sacrifice that hour in the gym for anything else, because it helps me be a better version of me. True. Right? It gets me what I want out of life. Why would I give that up? Right. So, as life goes by and we encounter new experiences and new opportunities, we again put it through that filter of, okay, what is my highest priority? And if I don't have health, I don't have much else. I got life, but I don't have much else. So that ranks extremely high on my priority list. And so I have a tendency to put everything through that filter now. And because I'm not willing to compromise what I get to enjoy now as compared with 2 years ago.
And to build off of that, from a coaching perspective, what I find valuable in everything you just said there, two things specifically jumped out to me. The first being immediately what you just said with the lifestyle was, it's my job as a coach to ensure that this is a dance, not a wrestling match. I do not want you to look at this as drudgery. I do not want you to look at this as a task that has to be checked off. I want it to be something that is empowering, that you look forward to. It doesn't necessarily mean it will be easy or pleasurable the entire way through, as it definitely is not either of those things. But it's something that is encouraging, something that you feel you can manage, that you can be victorious with, that you can own and know that you're the one in control to a degree, right? Even though I might be pulling the strings behind the scenes to make sure that it's well managed, but you can show up and you don't feel like it's going to overwhelm you and that you're going to fail with it on a regular basis, or that you're going to be sore for an entire 10 days afterwards and you absolutely hate the process and can't wait to quit, right? That's encouraging, that you're now prioritizing something that once was more of an afterthought, maybe, where it's like, oh, I should probably start doing that. Now it's like, what could potentially hinder my progress, or what is hindering my progress, and how can I adjust it to ensure that it's less impactful or eliminated entirely, so that this continues to provide the yield that makes my life so much better. And the other thing is, as you talked about a few seconds back, was if I have a bad night's sleep, I close the app. That's encouraging, because that means that the lessons I've tried to pass forward are actually pieces of knowledge and experience now that you are able to act upon without me having to remind you. And that's a huge part of what I believe makes a quality coach, as opposed to just a trainer. As I mentioned, I try and delineate between the two, because a trainer will give you a tough workout for the hour. A coach is going to pass on information and knowledge that arms you to succeed on your own, right? I don't need to regulate your decision to not work out because you had a poor night's sleep. You now know that is not a great idea, and there's always another day to train. And that there's nothing hardcore or disciplined about maintaining that regimen should you be risking injury. It's better to say, you know what, I should probably take a nap today, or I should probably get to bed an hour or two earlier, and I can train again tomorrow if I have to roll it forward a day or two. So, but those 2 points I really wanted to touch on, because they're very encouraging from my perspective, and I very much value those points.
Excellent. So, being respectful for your need to get a good night's sleep.
Luckily, I only live 5 minutes from the gym, assuming I do the speed limit within reason.
Yes. Yeah, please don't speed.
No.
But Ben, I'm so grateful for you spending your time and giving your expertise and sharing it with our audience. I'm very appreciative on a personal level, because I am achieving my goals and I'm very happy with what we're doing together. But beyond that, we've just scratched the surface. we could spend a lot more time, which we're not going to do tonight, but I'd be delighted to have you back again, and we can
be my honor.
Yeah, we can dig a little deeper on this on another time. But thank you so much for taking your time tonight, and thank you to all of you who have joined us live, and for those of you who are watching on YouTube or wherever else later. I hope this has been insightful. I hope this is useful content that you can apply practically in your life, and we hope that gives you opportunity to make your life a better life for you. So thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you, Ben, and we'll look forward to the next time we have you back, and have an awesome night, everybody. Take care.